supermarkets.
Nick, I have exciting news.
I can't wait to hear it.
Played my first round of golf here in Minnesota on Sunday.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. It was great. Excited to be back.
And what did you shoot? 90 what?
I just snuck it in under 100. It was
All
good.
Right, nice, yeah. No,
Thank you. I've been working hard on these lives every day, just fine tuning.
I'm sorry. We're really taking you. Harvey's really taking you away from your practice.
Yes. Well, welcome everybody. We're excited to hang out today with a special guest, Connie Chen. Connie, how's it going?
Hey, Rory. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. If people don't know who you are, could you give us a quick little bio background on kind of who you are, what you do?
So I'm a touring pro. Played on the tour for like 10 years, I guess. I turned pro when I was 18, and I went straight on the LET. That year, I qualified for a conditional card, but in 2011, the tour was still doing quite well. So I had about 12, 13 spots. Kept my card and won on the European tour in 2014 in Tenerife. So that was great. Had a great time that week. Game came together, and then after that, played a few more times. Played on the Evian, played at the British Open, and then I decided to get my PGA card, PGA qualification, and I joined GOLFTEC last year in Finland. I had a great time working with GOLFTEC, and now I'm doing my own stuff.
And you missed so many important things. Like, did you read that Golf Digest magazine of best instructors in the world? Did you read that one?
Yes, I did.
Did you know that your name was on there?
Yeah. I got some messages from a few friends around telling me that was, and I was super excited when I found out. So
well, that's pretty awesome. Congrats.
It is. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also doing the Golf Channel thing with you. That was really fun.
That's right. We should put a link somewhere so people can find that, or just search Golf Channel and then search Connie's name and you'll find it. We just did that in Orlando, whatever, at the PGA show. So I think it's aired already, but you can find it online. Hey, I remembered that you won a tournament. I sent that to Cordy earlier when he asked who you were. And I said, how do you not know Connie? Do you live under a rock or something? But Minnesota is like the same thing. How many shots did you win that tournament by?
I think it was 2 or 3.
Were you nervous on 18?
I was kind of nervous. I was leading by like 4 shots going into the last hole with a par 5. I had a rescue in for my second shot. It was definitely birdie. And I was like thinking to myself, you know what, whatever you do, just don't miss left. Because if you miss left, you're like screwed. You can't. I missed the left.
So where did you hit it? Yeah, to the left. Of course you did. Yeah. You need to follow our Dr. Craig's advice. Go back a few shows and watch some we had a great sports psychologist on talking about stop thinking that way, Connie. What's wrong with you? Do better.
Yeah, because your brain doesn't pick up the don't, right? Your brain doesn't process negative.
Nick,
did I sum that up right, Cordy?
There. I don't think that's what he said, but that was a really good attempt at it. Yeah.
Well, it felt like that's what he said sometimes.
Yeah. Dr. Craig Parton, people should go back for sure.
It's perfect. His advice was awesome. It was essentially, I could sum that up for you. It's okay to think that you can't hit the ball to the left, but then get back in the mode of I'm going to hit a good shot and nail it on the green. So you could have listened to that, but you still won by 2 or 3. So congrats. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk to you about a topic that you've been doing. You've been making some social media content that is about how to practice indoors, because I know you're stuck in the Grand Cayman, which are many, many, many worse places to be stuck, Connie, but it was all about how to practice or take that practice from indoors outside.
Yes. So I'm seeing a lot of people right now practicing indoors, and all they're doing is just hitting shots with no kind of intention and no aim of what they're wanting to achieve. So they could take a few pointers from what tour players do. I know not everyone has launch monitors or has the ability to buy one, But you can use something as simple as your cell phone, put it on a selfie mode, put it on a chair or something, and you could hit shots into the net while putting it on a down to line view or front view and just watch yourself like a mirror. And then obviously, look at the points that you want to work on. For instance, if you want to hit a draw, where your hands need to be to hit a draw. Or, if you're hitting a fat 3-4 inches behind the ball, what you should do. I mean, obviously move your weight left, things like that. So just checkpoints.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, then let's get into, can I share a swing of you?
Sure. I always say that I would seriously give anything if I could just cut my lead arm off and just replace it with something decent.
Well, let's talk about that. So here we go. This is you in this same room I'm in. Top of your backswing is really nice. I know you spend very little time practicing that, but on the downswing, you do practice how to keep your left arm straighter. Can you elaborate on why you're trying to do that and how you do it, how you practice it?
Well, my main reason why I want to change it is because when your lead arm is obviously the radius of your swing, and if that keeps changing, it then hinders your ability to correctly strike the ball. Your low point is changing throughout your golf swing. So I have that point where I'm coming down, that arc is now shortening, and I have to now obviously lengthen it in order to hit the ball, and that causes then that face to shut through impact, and all the good players all miss left. And you do know, everyone knows that one shot could mean a cut or even your chance to make a top 10 into the final round, right? So things like that.
Fair enough. Okay, so then on this one, I've got, assuming I can make this work, I have the downswing on this side.
Connie, what are some of the ball striking issues that you have? You struggle with low point control, and has that been an issue for you then?
Yeah, that's always been an issue for me, since I started playing golf, I guess. I think it just all started with the way when I learned to play golf. I didn't really have a lot of lower body movement. Since if I look at my earlier swings from when I started, something I really wished I knew when I started playing golf was having my feet, I need to flare them out. And still a lot of people still teach with you need to stand with your feet straight like this, with no angle. And I was taught like that. And for many, many, many years, I kept telling myself, I don't need to flare out because I'm a girl. I'm very flexible. I don't need it. But as I started getting into the teaching side of it, and I started learning more about it, and I started understanding, why didn't I do this?
Good. I have these two about in the same spot, and I'm laughing because of the way you told that story. I'm a girl. So maybe I can even try to demo this one. How about that, Cordy? Is that good TV or what?
Oh my! It's like you put the camera in the ground, Nick. This is incredible. Wow.
It's amazing. Write this down, Cordy. So instead of standing at a dress with both of your feet very straight, sometimes I hear advice, turn the front one out, your lead foot. And sometimes that's met with apprehension. Sometimes you hear, if you want to turn a little more, turn your right foot out. But I would prescribe, and Connie's saying the same thing, turn them both out 20 or 30 degrees. If you want to find an old video of Sam Snead, you could use that as an extreme model where his are turned out even more than that. But it starts to preset how much your knees are turned outward. It makes turning in the backswing easier to do by moving your trail foot outward some. So everyone watching this, if you wanted a tip about how to stand on the first tee and play golf a little different, turning both of your feet out is the norm on the PGA Tour. It's not an exception. And you can see Connie's feet in both of these swings right here the same way. So Connie's practicing the left arm part right here, how much flex there is in her left elbow. And then this one on the right is much straighter. So do you want to talk about how it is that you do practice that, Connie? And then I'll just frame advance this and follow you along.
All right, so my way of practicing this is I kind of feel like instead of taking full swings, because it's harder to control, I just take half swings, keep both my arms as straight as possible, trying to feel like my right arm stays straight through the downswing. On the way down, I try to extend my right arm. because the minute I extend my right arm, that then pulls my left arm out and straightens it as well. Also, I try to exaggerate my finish. When I finish, I try to have both those arms as straight as possible through the shot.
And then over here, I don't know how much we've talked about this before with you, but your neck extension, just the way that you flex and extend your neck is back more in that swing on the right, which is good too. It's just making it easier for you to keep moving your right shoulder and not have it stop so soon.
Yeah.
It's a nice swing. Why don't you just hit like that all the time? Or is that your advice to everyone? Just hit those punch shots.
I think you should just hit punch shots.
I agree with you.
Punch to win.
Most people went out and just actually hit a shot. I'll just play this one at a speed that's 120 frames per second here. People just went out and played golf like Connie.
You can't actually see that other video. I don't know if you can.
Oh, sorry.
We
can
see it now. I was just sitting next to you saying, I'll just.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, sorry, I'm sharing the two tiles back and forth. I didn't share it. So here's the way Connie's actually describing her practice, if you did miss that. It's on the downswing, just feeling like her right arm and her left arm are as straight as she can get them, even into here, and keeping it straight all the way through the ball. And then I was describing how her head and her neck are further stretched backward in this video. But if people just hit this way, you can see her follow through isn't going much further than that, and started to hit the balls hard, fast, but tried to stop just like she does in this video, golf would be a better place, because you're just learning how to not use your wrists like they're just flopping around in the wind. You're using that to keep some structure in how you hit these shots, trying not to bend your wrists around very much. They are, but you're trying to restrict that to some degree. And that would help people hit the ground in the right spot and do a better job of not flexing their left arm through the ball. That chicken wing term that's used abstractly and poorly in most golf descriptions.
Hey, can we bounce back to the feet thing real quick, Nick? Because it's funny you say that. So last year, I was working with a PT. He noticed just some hip lack of mobility, had me flare the right foot, and then I had an instructor say to me, like, you should flare the left one as well. Why are you just doing the one? And I don't think it's talked about that much. But then once you are aware of it and start looking around, you see, like you mentioned, that everybody does it. So why is it not common? I think it's really crazy to me now, just looking around, being aware of it.
Yeah.
Like it's strange.
Yeah, I guess I could go a lot of ways with that one. I'm going to start with the hypothesis that having your feet straight just looks better on camera. And I think that's always the worst way to try to choose your system to play golf. So turning them out, as your PT mentioned, it gives you more range of motion. So that's the beginning of why people claim they're not flexible enough to play the game, is they're usually choosing a swing style that is impossible to do. Or even Connie, who's a girl, as she mentioned before, can't do something that requires a lot of flexibility. So there's a lot of cottage industries being built around how you, Cordy, aren't flexible enough to play the game, when it's not that whatsoever. You need to have a simpler way of hitting a shot. So you have good advice from your golf instructor too, of turning both out, especially for the downswing and follow through. You have to turn your knee and your pelvis enough to face the target, where if you have your foot really straight, like we looked at before, you're just making it much harder to turn through the shot. So golf's just more complicated the less you know about that.
Connie, kind of going back, I'm curious how, you were really good at a young age, just reading through some of your bio. How did you get good? Or like, how did you develop skill at a young age?
This is kind of going to be like a whole life story, but when I started playing golf, Connie. Okay. When I started playing golf, so my dad actually started playing, and I joined like a kind of Asian or Chinese kind of golfing group. There's a bunch of kids playing together, and I was always very competitive. So I always wanted to beat someone else or beat the other kid. And then after about a year or so, my dad wanted to take me to a few events, and I met a few of the other kids, and I started getting better and better. So my dad wanted me to kind of like, okay, well, why don't you try to go at this? I found a coach who was teaching a lot of the best players in South Africa at the time, Gavin Levinson, and he was a past player. He won the SA Open when he was playing on tour. And because he came from a playing background, I don't think that my swing was the best on tour or best in South Africa. To be honest, I think it was a horrible golf swing if I look back at it now. But the scores I was shooting, the kind of confidence I had in myself and my playing ability, with a coach like that, like Gavin, he built me up. Playing these little competitions with the other kids, it was all result based. It was very competitive. It wasn't like putting us in one spot and telling us to chip over and over again, perfecting a technique, trying to figure out putting us in different positions, like behind a tree, hitting over a tree, in a bunker, downhill, just different lines, and having you figure out how to play those shots. And I'd get these like really horrible lies in the bunker, and I'd spend like hours and hours trying to figure out how to get it. But if I couldn't, I'd go to him. He'll come and he like hits this like really spinny shot from a downhill lie with like a 4-iron. I'm like, how do you do that? So things like that made me kind of really interested and wanted to get better, and I did. And then when I actually wanted to turn pro, I kind of started seeing a lot of the negative stuff about myself. So okay, so I felt like, okay, my swing wasn't great enough, and that's where I've kind of realized I needed to find a balance. If I look back now, is that yes, the result practice that I was raised up with was perfect, but I also needed the technique side to play on tour, because you're playing week in, week out. And the pressure you're under and things like that, if you don't have the technique to fall back on, you're going to struggle.
Good. I like the way you said that. That was short, Connie, and it was good.
All right.
There's some passion behind
20
that.
minutes there.
No, that's fine. So you could tell Gavin really helped you a lot with encouragement, and he taught you to get creative and hit some strange shots, and you were really good, so that helped you a ton. And then he made it fun for you, made it enjoyable. So maybe your golf swing wasn't as good as it was now, so you hit better shots now, but it was still enough to just push you just a little bit harder. So I think that's a huge aspect of coaching. That's important.
Yeah.
So when people are, do you have some sort of prescription you'd give like pretty much any golfer to practice at home that they can then take it outside here very shortly if they don't have nice weather?
Depends on what you're trying to hit. I mean,
okay.
If you're trying to hit a draw, like I know everybody is, check your arm position.
Okay. You want to demonstrate that or explain some more about that?
Okay. Let me see if I've got enough space.
I think you're good. We'll let you know if you're doing it wrong.
Working in a tight position right now. Tight, like space.
You're good. That'll work. We can see you. Yes.
Okay. So I think a lot of people at home who are slicing the ball, you have a tendency to come over the top, or even in your takeaway, in your backswing, your hands are too in front of your chest. And I'm not going to fault them on it, because obviously a lot of the instruction they've had, or a lot of people that they learn from, are telling them, you need to take your hands in front of your chest. That's the best way. Well, you know, Nick, that you need arm depth to kind of hit the draw, right? If you're out here, you have a tendency to go out more, out to in swing path. So I would say that if you're at home, if you have a mirror, check yourself in the mirror, or if you're hitting a net, get yourself set up with your phone, and just check that your hands are behind your body. So when you get to the top of your backswing, at least your hand here is behind your shoulder, your trail shoulder here. And on the way down, your hands are crossing now the lower part of your right arm, so your elbow-ish. And that's going to definitely make you hit a draw every time. And if you're not hitting a draw, maybe check something else. You're probably not hitting it at the center of the face.
All right. Well, let's go on that one. Even if you're not trying to hit a draw, let's grab the shaft here. So you're describing on the way down, when your left arm's parallel to the ground, that your hands would bisect. Kind of, you can see where the G is on my shirt here, that GOLFTEC logo, if I can get in the way. Where that's about where the shaft is when your left arm's parallel to the ground. If you wanted to hit a shot that wasn't a draw, where would you tell someone to put that?
Well, further up, further higher.
Yeah,
so
but how much?
Say on the shoulder.
Yeah, maybe at the most that high?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see too many tour players anymore having it higher than that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a tour player and or anyone who's overhooking it, you just want to kind of lift it up for the higher. So maybe just underneath the right shoulder.
That's good.
I wouldn't go higher than that, or even.
That's good advice for people. Yeah. Starting at about the middle of my bicep here. You following along with that, Cordy? Are we explaining that okay?
I'm here. Yep. Following.
Okay. I figured you were. I just want to make sure we there's no follow-up question there. So the grip end of my club is just about on that G that's on my shirt. But Connie's saying, even if you do want to not draw the ball, you want to hit it pretty straight or even curve it a little bit to the right for the right-handed player, you should have the shaft a little higher when your arm's parallel to the ground, but never above your shoulder. So even this high is too far out away from you. It's not that you can't overcome that. Some players do, but it's much harder and more complicated to not slice if you don't play golf every single day, or you don't play at a PGA Tour level, or you don't have ball speed of like Brooks Koepka. Gets more challenging. Connie, how about someone who is hitting behind the ball? What sort of advice would you have for that? And I'm asking these questions a little bit. You kind of prompted this too. You don't practice these things in your house, if I'm following you along, based upon just do this. What you first want to start with is what's your problem, and then do something, a drill or an exercise, or dedicate practice time to what the problem is and how to solve it. Is that fair? Yeah. And then, okay, so could you demonstrate for us how someone might practice how to not hit behind a golf ball?
So if you're struggling with, say, contact or low points, get yourself a chair. This one's slightly too high for me. I'm quite short, but get yourself a chair, put it on your right side for someone who's right-handed. And once you get to the top of your backswing, you want to feel like you're further away from this chair. You don't want to ever be closer to this chair. Can you hear me? You okay?
Yep, we got it. We're listening intently.
Yeah, okay, because I thought I lost you guys. Okay. No, it looks like I lost you guys for a second there. Okay, so once you get to the top of your backswing, if you're moving into the chair, it just means that you're swaying way too much. You're swaying away from the top. When you're doing that, you move here to hit the ball in the correct place. And a lot of amateurs either overdo it or they actually don't do it and they stay here. And that's why they end up hitting behind the ball so much. So this is like the easiest way for you to just play golf. Don't move left, don't move right. Okay, most importantly, don't move right. You can move left. But this is definitely going to help you with fat shots. Put a chair on your right side, go to the top of your backswing, get yourself further away from this chair, which means that you're now more towards the target. And then you just limit yourself. It just helps with you not hitting behind the ball. You'll definitely be hitting in front of the ball, that's for sure. So on the left
we
side,
talked about this. We talked about this last week, Nick, talking about how in your guys' study you've seen sway towards the target in better players and away from the target in worse players. Is that right? Did I remember that right?
Definitely. Yeah, at impact and the top of the swing. So Connie's demonstrating that well. And even some players, like you'll watch golfers on the PGA Tour. We're talking about the pelvic sway, so where your pelvis is in the swing. There are PGA Tour players who move away from the target to start their swing in the backswing and start to sway off the ball. It's not that that's wrong, but that's definitely not the factor that's making them really good. By the time they get to the top of the swing, they have their pelvis or their hips further toward the target, the average tour player does, than those players who have high handicaps. So Connie's tip about just practice keeping your hips further away from the chair is a good start to learning how to fit into that study and be a better golfer.
Yeah, so I mean, to talk about what you said there, Nick, is that like, so you look at Rory Mcilroy from P1 to P2, he has a slight shift off the ball towards his right hip. But even that slight shift isn't a lot. He's still moving within his hip, moving just into his right hip. And a lot of amateur golfers and weekend golfers think, oh, I need to move right, and then actually do it way too much. So that's the difference. But once Rory gets to the top of his backswing, he's now moved left. So like you said, he's a small move, but then on the top, he's now left.
And the consequence of that is people struggling with hitting fat shots and just low point control, right? Your strike quality is going to go way down if you have that much sway back potentially.
Yeah, it's not making the game any easier, although sometimes it's prescribed that you need to move your center of pressure, move your center of mass intentionally away from the target. And that's not wrong. It is a little detrimental if you don't understand the rest of the swing, which is on the downswing, it needs to move forward. And the best players move forward faster from the top of the swing down with their pelvis than the worst players. So if you don't have that acquired skill, moving away from the target on the way back is just setting you up to swing across the ball and start slicing for one. That one we didn't talk about, but also the fat shots, or starting to flex your elbow and your wrist to avoid hitting the fat shots, and you can hit the top of the ball that way too. You just have just chaos from starting that way. Most golfers, to get going, if you don't want to hit behind the ball, don't move to the right or away from the target in the backswing, is a really good start to your system. Doesn't mean it's going to work flawless, but it's a better start than moving into your trail side too much. So Connie, going outside, what do you think people should be doing when they first they go outside for the first time, maybe all winter long, or they're cooped up in their house and they're ready to get out? What should people be either practicing or doing before they go play a round of golf?
Definitely visit the range for sure.
That's good.
Yeah, then you visit the range, look at their ball flight, because obviously being indoors, and if they are practicing indoors, definitely interesting seeing your ball fly for the first time after a while. I know that feeling. And then, you need to assess what shape you're hitting that day. I generally hit a draw all the time, but some days that draw doesn't happen, it's a push. So you kind of just figure out what you're doing that day and go on the golf course with what you have.
How about a little GPS, Nick, for folks getting back out there? Little grip posture.
Yeah. Connie, you want to talk about that? Corey's really just asking, what do you think about just doing what I think most people call the basics?
Gaps. That you should do that all indoors, man. Yeah. You can't see yourself. You can't see yourself on the range when you're like, is my alignment correct? No, I just look down. I can't see anything. So the best way would just, like I said, all the stuff, technical stuff, just leave it indoors. Just like if you look at all the tour players, and I'm not sure if it's the same for the guys or the girls on tour, when they leave the golf course, they leave their bags at the golf course, but they'll take either a putter, a wedge, or an iron back with them to the room, so then they can kind of like check themselves in the mirror, not to look good. Okay, maybe to look good as well, but to also check their alignment, their posture, certain things they're working on with their alignment. Not everyone has the same kind of checkpoint. So some people prefer, let's say, with putting, some people have the ball under their left thigh, some have it more centered. So different.
Yeah, that's good. Cordy, I've got one more to show you here. So I think here's some advice I might have for someone trying to play golf a little bit better.
Okay.
And I haven't seen this one necessarily talked about. So I've got a crazy graph here. And I think this is a good one for all of us to act out. This is how you learn. Can you see the graph? Did I do it right this time, Cordy?
You did it, Nick. We got it.
One of these days we'll get the hang of it. So here's an interesting graph. Move you around a little bit here. So first, most people who are practicing at home, I think to Connie and my point, are really just practicing drills or exercises. But this is also a good time to raise your education level a little bit, because you can learn so much from even what looks like a daunting graph like this. This is not complicated, and it's really very important. It's a little bit of the essence of what makes good players good. So let's look through this one. So first, we're going to talk about bend. Connie, you want to do a demo, face like side view, and I'll guide you through how you're going to move around. I know you know this from your days of teaching golf with us. So side view, so the bend. Can you explain what that is or demonstrate how that would work through your shoulders?
So your bend would be, if you're going forward, so forward bend towards the ground, if your chest moving towards ground, and if your chest is now further away from the ground, that's back bend.
That's pretty good. So let's talk about that. So here's your bend graph, and we'll talk about the thorax. So that's basically where Connie was pointing on her sternum. And then this is a point right in the middle of your shoulders, right in the middle of your body, and how that's going to move around. I'll still keep making it less complicated, but this is essentially how you just move the top of your shoulders, the lower part of your neck. So we're going to follow this green line. The y-axis here is how many degrees forward you're bent. So on this one, Connie, can you demonstrate that side view of about 30 degrees forward? Good. So basically how you would start at address. Then without turning or tilting, yep, we got you. Then without turning or tilting, just raise your arms up into the air as this follows. In the backswing, right about here is pretty close to the top of the swing. Your shoulder bend actually starts to go backwards a little bit. So maybe a few more degrees back than that. You got it. That's pretty good. So you don't see that in the swing, but we'll get to that point here in just a second. But Connie's demonstrating this point on the graph right here. So she started bent forward and slowly moved herself backward. Then before the downswing starts, here's the top of the swing, this blue line. That's when she actually starts to bend forward again. So can you go from the 30 forward to just slightly back to 30 forward again? Okay. Just before she hits the ball, now she starts to take her shoulders and bends them back one more time. And that's what this arc in the graph or this lowering point is. So ultimately where she's into the follow through and bent backwards about 45 degrees. So here's the motion of a player, even though you don't see that when they're playing golf. Bent forward 30. By the time they get to the top of their backswing, they actually have their thoracic spine bent backward ever so slightly, at least in this graph. Then on the way down, you bend forward again before ultimately hitting and bend yourself backward one more time and bending back a lot. We talked a little bit about that with Terry Rolls last week, but this graph is the pattern of how people move who are good at golf. And there are almost no exceptions. I mean, everyone does this. It's just to the matter of a degree. And when I look at these same graphs of how people swing, you could look at that like it's complicated, but this isn't for every student to necessarily own and do perfectly well. But it is good to understand that that's the pattern of how people move forward, backward, forward, and then before you hit, bend yourself backward again. You won't hit the top of the ball as long as your arms are straight, like what Connie described going forward. Just practicing bending yourself forward and backward, understanding when you should be doing that, like this graph represents. That is actually maybe the most useful practice people can do at home. So instead of mocking out a practice swing or hitting a ball aimlessly into a screen or a net, or even if you're making those little tape balls like I would prescribe to do and hitting that into a wall, like that's fine. There's a place for that, but this is an awesome time for education, which is what we try to put up on our YouTube channel all the time and demonstrate a graph like this. But this is a PGA Tour player who hits the ball far, and this is how he moves. I could put 10 other PGA Tour players up there, and this curve will look the same. How dramatic they move up and down, that's usually what separates someone's skill of hitting the ball very far. Still following me, Cordy? Any questions in there?
I think you explained that perfectly. I 100% get it.
Okay, awesome. Connie, what do you think? Does that sound about right? Did I miss anything?
No, it's perfect.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah.
So Connie, how can people find you on social media? Let's talk about you again here.
Oh God. Yeah, so my Instagram is ConnieChen_golf. And if you follow me, I am posting quite regularly now so that because I've got a lot more time.
Yeah, fair enough. We totally get it. And you're doing a great job on that. So anybody who is interested in golf instruction and getting better at their game and watching the Connie Chen, Ladies European Tour winner, tell you how to play the game, I'd listen up and heed your advice.
Absolutely. Connie, I have one last question for you. How has your playing experience, how has that impacted your instruction or the way that you teach and the things that you share? What do you think is the impact on that?
So, because I came from a playing background, I think that a lot of the things that I kind of teach, I also kind of put my experience into it. So, if I'm telling someone you need to, for instance, flare out your foot, I know what, the kind of what they're gonna say. In a way, they're gonna like fight me on it a little. I'm like, well, you know, I don't like it, or yeah, I don't feel comfortable with it. I'm like, well, I went through the same thing, so I can tell them the experience. And also, being a tour player, a lot of times if we hear something we don't like, we usually go like, no, you don't know anything, or we kind of just brush you off a lot. But so I've learned to be able to deal with that, because I came from that. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, this makes sense. I'm not really going to tell you something that doesn't make sense. And also kind of telling people what I went through and my process of how I got better. And people seem to listen to that better and more. I think a lot of things that I'm seeing right now is a lot of coaches who kind of don't like the idea of other players giving advice to people. So you get, you know, other tour players giving advice, and then coaches then commenting and saying, you know, that's incorrect and things like that. But I think that coaches need to work more with players and educating tour players, so that the information that the tour players are giving is much more on par with what is correct. Because tour players can only tell you about the feel and how to execute the shot, and the coach can now tell you how it's done and why it works.
Cool.
So
I like it.
You know, having both of those things really helped me, I think. So
absolutely.
I don't know if I answered your question or not. I seem to ramble on a little. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. People should go follow along with what you're doing. And thanks so much for hanging out with us here on a Tuesday afternoon. We appreciate it, Connie.
I had a great time.
Awesome.
I really miss talking with other people now that, you know, all I get to do is talk to my dog all day. So it's a difference.
We'll be back to normalcy here, hopefully shortly, but keep up the great work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Connie. We will see everyone. We'll see everyone tomorrow, 2 Eastern. Nick and I will be back with, so many surprises and good things. We missed it. Is that a good teaser, Nick? Did I really sell it?
Your delivery, man. You got that.
Perfect. We'll see
very
everyone
dry.
tomorrow.
I love it. Yeah.